Go for it, go for it. I'm just saying I'm not finished yet. Search for it, swing for it. Discover the me that lives in yes. Stand for it, stretch for it. It's my time, imagine my best. Run for it, reach for it. Uncover the me that lives in yes. I know, yes I know. There'll be miracles wherever I go. It's not work, it's play. I can make magic today.
Hi everyone, welcome to Senior Nation. I'm your host, Phyllis Ayman, and you are listening to the Source TV Radio Network, WTSN, Washington, D.C. We are indeed a senior nation with 100 plus million adults over the age of 50. And we are here to bring you up-to-date information about successful aging, healthful longevity, and becoming what I call a well-ager, to dignity, respect, quality of life, and quality of care for our parents, our grandparents, and loved ones. We at Senior Nation will be your trusted voice for informed choices, meaningful conversations, and a vibrant life at every age. Though the Source TV Radio Network is known for its dedication to bringing the highest level of jazz content to the viewing and listening audience, the owners of the network are also dedicated to bringing this important content to this fast-growing demographic, and I'm always grateful to have the opportunity. And now I'd like to introduce tonight's guest. Suzanne Swope graduated from Boston University with her doctorate of education in speech pathology and began her career working as a speech pathologist in public schools. She initiated her college teaching career at Emerson College, becoming a tenured full professor, and she went on to serve as Vice President of Enrollment and Student Affairs at Emerson College and the University of Bridgeport. She was also the Associate Vice Provost and later Associate Vice President for Information Management at George Mason University and Vice President for Enrollment Management at Fontbonne University. Her professional experience spans 40 years. After retiring from administrative work, she turned to public service in Winthrop, Massachusetts, serving 6 years on the school committee, and is currently serving a 4-year term on town council, where she was recently selected as vice president. Suzanne and I recently had a conversation about stages as we age, what we lose and what we gain. And I'm really thrilled that we'll be able to have the conversation tonight on Senior Nation about the same topic.
Hi, Phyllis.
Hi, Suzanne.
It's so nice of you to invite me.
Well,
I just want to say I've known Phyllis for quite a while, and if she has garnered such support on this issue, and she has written about it, she has cared about it, she has actually experienced all sorts of work in senior living situations, and I'm so proud to have known her, and I hope you all understand the wonderful opportunity you have to talk to her, because she is, to me, a real role model.
Oh, well, okay. So I don't think I'll be able to say anything else because I'm kind of choked up. But in all transparency, Suzanne, you were one of my first undergraduate professors in the field of communication disorders, which is what it was called at Emerson College at the time. So in reality, I mean, you've known me since I'm about 18. And probably know as much about me as anybody else, good, bad, and indifferent. So no, well, as before we get into this, actually, I am going to tell the little story about, because obviously I've been an advocate for a very long time. So I'll just tell the little story as quickly as I can. So at the time that I took this first course in communication disorders, you and the professor who taught it, Dr. Jackie Liebergott, had a different kind of format. And we as students really didn't appreciate it so much. We didn't really see the benefit of it at the time. It was really kind of a self-learning way of approaching this subject matter. And so we signed a petition, and we confronted, I can still see myself really. And we confronted you and Dr. Liebergott, and you asked us, what we were there for, what we wanted to say, even though you had the petition. And of course, there was only one person that really raised their hand, and that was me. And I said my piece, and then you two gave it to me, and I thought I was going to be expelled because this was back in 1971 or something like that, because that's what happened to people then, right? But then nobody else said another word, right? You asked other people if they had anything else to say. Nobody said a word. But then afterwards, you and Jackie Liebergott really had very complimentary words for me about standing up for what I really believed in. So I guess it starts from way back then.
It does. Always starts early on.
So anyway, being that we've known each other all these years, and you're about 11, I think you're 10 or 11 years my senior, so you've gone through a few more stages than I have. So we got into this conversation about, what we lose, what we gain and what we lose. You've also cared for your granddaughters since they were about, I think, 5 or 6. Now they're probably teenagers. Okay. So, and you've been through, some of those stages. So, I thought it would be a great conversation to talk about, the beauty of adolescence. Maybe it's a childhood, maybe it's imagination and discovery. And, then do you lose that? What do you gain at the next stage, which might be adolescence? So let me hear, and you have a doctorate in education. So I thought you would be a great person to talk to about this.
Well, thanks, Phyllis. I think in reflection, before I start this conversation, I really now understand in my old age that I stand on the backs of so many women that have made a difference in my life. And without that, and without the courage and the support, I would never have been able to make it. And I hope that we all can appreciate that as we go through life, because I certainly do. And as we talked about this issue, it's funny. I never thought about trade-offs until I was this age. I don't understand why I didn't, because I taught psychology and I certainly have worked with a lot of younger people, but I never thought about it as trade-offs. And so I thought I had discovered something really new. But frankly, this has been an ancient idea. It certainly started in finance because of trade-offs. But when you think about it, even as a young age, when you think about it, and you think about your kids, or you think about the kids that are just starting life, and they're so dependent on their caregivers, parents, or whomever is taking care of them. And then early on, they decide that discovery is worth it.
Right.
Well, that means that you have to give up something.
Right.
The trade-off is dependence. So in terms of that, you begin to walk. And by the way, you also begin to say no.
Right.
What are you trading off? You're trading off a parent or a caregiver who loves you and takes care of you, total security, versus discovery, and it's worth it. And then you learn that discovery is not all bad. So it's interesting that it starts that early, because I never even thought about that.
So interestingly enough, and then we could go on to adolescence, which is more kind of like identity formation or whatever. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but so it's interesting because I'm now in a situation where there are several people who have very young children, and so as we're talking about this, I'm kind of hearing them experience it, right? So one has a child who's 18 months going to 2, the other one 3, and they're starting to experience their child saying no or having an opinion about them, which is very disturbing to them. They didn't expect this child that they nurtured and cared for and loved all of a sudden would have these ideas and be able to express them. So it's really kind of just what you say. And of course it would be hard to determine how the child feels about that, but we know how the parent feels about that. We want our children to be independent, right? We do.
Not really.
I say we do and we don't.
Until it happens.
Right.
So, for example, do you really want your child, when you tell them, please do not go out there without clothes on, do you want them to do that because they're experimenting? Not really. So it's a very different thought, that I had as a grandparent versus I had as a parent. As a parent, I was always concerned about security, control. Not control, but just security and safety.
Maybe control, but no.
Always control, but safety and security, because of safety and security. And so I never thought about this from the child's point of view. Like how wonderful it is that they can find a way to discover and explore, and how difficult it is to test that in their early life, because I wasn't thinking about it from their point of view. Of course, I was thinking about it from a parent point of view. So, I think that's a good point that you mentioned, because it is, as you age, you actually can see different sides, and you probably can't as easily when you're younger. So that's a perspective.
It's interesting because many years ago, I wrote an article for Soccer America. I wrote it under, at the time, this person I was involved with for many years, and he was had been a professional soccer player, and then he was a coach, and he was he was lamenting about this is many years ago, about the American attitude towards the game, parents and whatever. And so I wrote this article, and I actually used child development, which actually I believe the first course I took from you was language development, was it not? I think so. Look at that. Pretty good memory still.
Absolutely.
And so I actually used that, the stages of what you're talking about, really metaphorically, about how, in soccer, we call it in this country football, and, around the world, is that, here, where the parents are always telling kids to kick the ball, kick it away. It's a different view of the game. But in reality, the control comes from holding the ball. And it's only once you are confident in holding it that you can kick it away with confidence and with focus and direction. And I actually use the stages of child development as a metaphor for that. And I used it especially when we come to adolescence, because adolescence is really stepping out into the world, right? And, as kind of as your own person in a way.
Yeah, and the trade-offs get harder, I think. I never thought, and maybe this does relate to soccer in some ways, because if you decide that you might want to go on in soccer to be a professional, now you have to think about a career option. And I don't know if I ever thought about it. My career option came because my father had a laryngectomy, and I thought I could make a contribution, and I was kind of inherent that I would do something like speech pathology. Did I decide on a career? Really? From my own perspective, no. I was so happy to do that. I thought I could make a difference. And so the career trade-off, I never thought of. Like, what, so what is it that you do in a career that trades off anything else? Do you choose a career that's high? I mean, I didn't even think about this. So I'm just saying this is.
Yeah.
So is it high stress versus low stress? Is it high rewards versus low rewards? Do you trade off sleep or personal friendships or what are spontaneous experiences because you have a career? Yeah, you just have a career, and to me, at that time, I did what I thought was necessary, and I wanted to make sure I was excellent at it.
That's interesting.
Trade-offs? I mean, didn't think about it.
So would you say, so I'm thinking, so adulthood, childhood, and then, adolescence, and then maybe we're getting to young adulthood. And that's kind of where you're talking about, are you making those choices then? Do you just fall into it? Is there ambition involved in that? It depends on who you are and what your point of view is, what your background is. It's interesting because how did I wind up in this field?
How did you?
How did I? Well, actually, I think there were a couple of ways. One was there was I knew I loved speech. My mother used to take me to museums when I was younger, and I used to love standing and listening to people with all the different accents, commenting and interpreting, the art. So that was one thing. I think that's what led me. I had a teacher in high school. I remember her name, who, when she spoke, it was like music. I mean, so she was a communications professor. But when I was about 13, I think it was, a family moved on to our block, and the little boy had cerebral palsy. And at that time, the Bobath training method had become popular. And most people in the neighborhood participated. And I had to wait until I forgot I was a certain height to stand above the table to do that. And his name was Dougie, and he couldn't talk. So I think everything together kind of pointed me in that direction.
It's fascinating because when you talk about that and I talk about that, it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with other people that we met, our experiences, how we felt about other people, how we could think we could make a difference, how we could make a difference, but because of the experiences that we had. But I really seriously never thought about things like stability.
Oh, me neither.
I would lack speech. I would lack sleep. I would have to get at least a master's, and then ended up getting a doctorate. I really had nothing to do with rational thought. It had to do with my experiences.
Interesting.
That's fascinating to me because I don't ever, if you ask me in later life why I decided that, it was all emotional. And I certainly never thought in a marriage to move on about any trade-offs like, oh, well, I can't date anymore. I'm married. I mean, I got married because, I don't know, I guess I wanted kids,
right?
A family, but I never really talked about trade-offs.
I don't think I did either. And actually, there's another through line from what I was doing to how I wound up working, I think, in long-term care and nursing homes and subacute, because my grandmother moved into a nursing home a few blocks from where we lived because my father didn't think her being in the house full-time in a hospital bed was such a great idea because I was 15. And my mother spent, every day, all day there. And then while they were on vacation, my sister and I took turns caring for her the way my mother did. And I think that's a through line that got me to this,
right.
To this environment.
Right.
So like you said, so I wonder how many people would describe, the choice they made or the path they were on or the direction or job they took because it was inspired by a situation, a person, something outside of themselves, rather than their own personal decision.
I think many. And I think has to do with what your family did, what your maybe, a role model did, and how you could see. But I mean, who are you in all that? Because you as a young adult are not perfectly formed, and you don't have. But nobody, if anybody had to explain to me probability theory, like 80% of the time, this is going to happen to you if you do this, and 20% of the time. Right. No, I mean, I never thought about that in those terms at all. It's only now that I'm older that I think about that and reflect on that. And it's fascinating because I'm interested now in the next generation, as you all, most of us are.
Right.
How we influence or how we talk about or how we think about their future and what could be helpful to them.
Right. So that actually is a great segue. So really to further along the timeline. So, I was thinking the next stage after young adulthood is probably, midlife. No, it's not. It's midlife and then maybe later life and then elderhood. So elderhood, so probably later life and elderhood have a lot of similarities in terms of wisdom and legacy and experience and, and all of that. And that's when I think you could look back and see what you just talked about.
Yeah, and I agree. You're absolutely right. And I never thought about it. I mean, I think we just have to step back a bit and think about responsibility versus freedom. Because when you're in a career, when you're in a family, when you are trying to raise kids, when you are trying to make money, whatever, you have so many options there about trade-offs. So, for example, my daughter got a law degree, and that was a real sacrifice for her. And she spent, she's, $70,000 in debt to get a law degree. So, but she decided after working in the law for a couple of years, that wasn't her thing. Now, I've got to tell you, that
was a hard pill to swallow. I happen to know.
That's a trade-off.
Right.
That's a sunk cost. If 20 years or, you've gone through school, you've gone through law school, you've spent a lot of money and you decide you don't want to do that. Wow. So that for me probably was not something I would have done. However, I did it in another way. And I think this is maybe kind of relevant. I mean, I don't know if you feel that way, but I think sometimes people make what I could call they don't negotiate a change. It's an either or.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of law, stay in law.
Right.
Get out of speech pathology, stay in speech pathology. But I think there's a negotiated settlement on many of the trade-offs that we make. For example, I was in speech pathology for a long time, as you pointed out in an earlier point about my career. But after I got tenure, I thought, I cannot believe I would do this for the next 30 years.
Right.
I have got to make a change, but I can't make a change out of education. I have to find a way to make a change so that I can use what I had and apply it to my next goal in life. And so I think that many people do that in a more not wishy-washy, easy way to
Right.
think about. You don't have to make extreme changes. You can actually incorporate what you have done to make your next life maybe more relevant or something that you really want to do.
Yeah,
So, and
interesting.
then I ended up in administration. And had I thought about that earlier, I probably, if I think about my past life, I would probably have been better off in business originally than I would have in speech path, but that was my passion. So you can't go back on that, and you have to make the best of what you have and realize that you have gained something. You know,
Well, I'm glad you did, because I'm
glad I met you.
how much I've learned from you, is pretty incredible. But actually, something you just said, I remember where I was sitting when I
do
thought
too,
this.
Phyllis.
So my first experience in a clinic at Emerson, I'll never forget it. And my first client experience, I said, "Oh, I don't want to do this. This is not what I want to do." And it was like my second to last semester, and there was no turning back. And it's funny you said law, because one of my mentors, who no longer alive, had said to me that I would be great. I'd be a great attorney because of, I have a logical way of approaching things and whatever. But certainly that wasn't in the cards. I couldn't do that. I couldn't make that switch at that time. It was too late. And
for you, it was too late.
Too late for me. Yeah.
It's a sunk cost. You couldn't trade off all the work that you had done to start over.
Correct.
And other people make that choice. Isn't that fascinating?
Correct. So, and it has to do with your situation, with life experiences, with, whatever the situations are. My father had passed away, and, there I was, and that wasn't the time to start carve a new path.
Right.
But it's interesting what you're saying about using what you have, because, I was always a good writer. I remember, that I was always a good writer. And have I used what I had, that I used so much of professionally, to write books, to, that me standing up in that class, that advocacy, that voice to speak for people who, well, they could have spoken, but they didn't. So, but that who don't have a voice or who can't speak. And so I guess it's kind of what you're saying. You've gone into more of an administrative path, right? And yet I have taken what I had and what I was good at and used it, to go in another path, do this show, and have, other projects that I want to pursue to raise awareness and, bring the conversation to a national level. So I guess, I'm using what I have had also, but in a different way.
I find my life now it's a different life stage. It's harder. It's more complicated. It's more nuanced. It's more thoughtful. It's more introspective. And so I find that the ultimate trade-off here in being my age, which you have not mentioned, but I am 84.
I said you were about 11 years my senior, because I'm 73, right?
You didn't say 73. That's all right.
I've said it on this show many times, so if anybody,
they already know, right?
They already know, right?
But the ultimate trade-off here is accepting where you are, and yeah, being on town council is fascinating, because I'm still wavering between, can I make a difference versus can I really form some kind of legacy and not worry about what's going to happen. So I'm always, and by the way, any of these stages are just, are you go back and forth on that. I mean, as an infant, it's back and forth on dependency. As an adult, it's back and forth on career versus maybe I don't want this, or it's just every stage. It's not easy. It's not linear. It's you kind of work through it.
I agree.
Yeah, and that's why parents sometimes, I think, we didn't understand our kids because we didn't understand where they were and what they were trying to accomplish as easily as you do as a grandparent. So I'm a little bit better at that. But I do find it difficult to find peace. I mean, I'm just struggling with this issue now, and I'm not authority on.
Well, but so I've thought, I made some notes actually. So do we, we live in a very youth idealized society, right? So youth is adored and idealized, and then it gradually slopes downward as people get older, right? That's part of the whole ageism and whatever. But I started to think about it, and I said, maybe instead of viewing aging as decline, sloping downward, maybe we should think of it as an accumulation of a compounding effect of all the experiences and, just what we're talking about, that we couldn't have had that conversation when we were in our 30s or 40s, because you need the perspective and the time to really look back and see all of these stages and integrate that into your being and your thinking. What do you think?
Well, that's fascinating, because I just had an experience a couple of days ago when on town council, we have someone who just turned 21. And so he challenged the status quo. And so the chair said, how irreverent.
Oh, that's reverse ageism, right?
Well, so people think that that you appreciate younger people's perspectives and ideas, but do you really?
But not everybody does. And so let me ask you this question. What is the average age of the people on the town council?
Well,
taking that person out of the picture.
I would say in their 50s, 60s.
Okay, so there you go. So that's like a reverse ageism.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm on the other end of that. So he's 21, I'm 84. And so then we have people in between. But my point about that is that how are we making decisions? And we can all learn from one another about that.
True.
Well, they can learn from me, but I can learn from him, and vice versa. So it's conversation. It's talking to each other. It's the ability to. If you're lucky enough to have grandparents, it's understanding their point of view and how they came to it, and it's they're understanding your point of view and how you're coming to it. It's this conversation that I think we could so benefit from in this country right now, particularly in our divide, and we don't do it enough. So now we decide, well, if you're on the other side, I can't talk to you. So but that is true when that is true for a lot of older people who
correct
know people at 16, but think they have another whole language. What are they talking about?
But I think so I think what you're saying is so important, because that is part of what we're experiencing, right? I don't mean just in these times, but that when you get to a certain point, you're kind of pushed out because you don't have relevance, or your ideas are antiquated, or I don't like the term old school or whatever. You're stuck in your ways or whatever. And some people are, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But I think it is so important, because younger people can learn from that perspective, from that expertise. But then the older person can learn from the younger person who maybe has fresh eyes and is looking at it
Absolutely.
from a different point of view and with a different approach.
What's fascinating when you said that? Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Because the younger person feels that they're not welcome to the table. And the older person feels they're not welcome to the table. So guess what? We have to all decide we're at the table.
Right.
And we have to speak our mind. We cannot sit and be silent. Whether you're older or you're younger, this is what energizes democracy. We have to believe in this. And I'm so excited that you have this program, because I think you bring out such important points of view that allows us to be a better society and to understand each other better. So,
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was thinking of when I'm talking about experience and the accumulation of wisdom and experience. And, there's a famous story. Now, I don't remember where I heard it first. I don't remember if it was Tony Robbins. It was somebody like that who told this story, but I think it's a well-known story. And I think it's true, something that happened. And I can imagine it. So there was this, I don't remember what kind of manufacturing plant, whatever it was. And there was a machine that was broken down and they couldn't get it fixed. Nobody could fix it, right? And they called this one person who had been, I think he used to work there and no longer worked there. I don't remember the details, but it's basically that. And the person came and took a screwdriver and turned the screw and, voila, everything started working. And he wanted to charge, I think he said it was $10,000. So the person who, the owner or the director, said $10,000, all you did, it took you 5 minutes. All you did was turn a screw. He said, that's true. But it was like, $100 to turn the screw, but it was all the years of experience that helped me know which screw to turn. Yeah. And so, that's, that's not the best telling of that story, but that's basically it. Yeah. And, I see that myself in what I'm doing. I see things, I see it differently because I think I have a more global view because of all the years of experience in the number of places in which I've worked, the number of environments which I've worked. I believe that's why it is important to have diverse experiences rather than working in one place for so many years. It may work for some people, but I think when you have a broader exposure, so you have, you can bring in more ideas, you have different experiences. I mean, that might not work for everybody, but I think for me it does.
Right. I think you do go from learning information when you're younger to wisdom, to character and wisdom. And those are all important ingredients in becoming an adult. And I truly think that everyone has something to offer. And if you believe that, then you start exploring who they are, what they've done, how they think, and we would be better off.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 500%. And I'm thinking that, working in the environment that I work in, that I'm still exposed to, I'm still involved in working in, and seeing so many, older people and so many conversations I have with people about what their experiences have been.
Right.
And, I've said this very often when I was about 50 and I was in these environments and somebody, I'd ask somebody their age and they would tell me their age. And then they'd say, what age are you? And I'd say, well, I'm near, I'm closer to you than you think, or I'm nearer than further. And when I would tell them my age, they'd say, oh, you're just a kid. And if they were 70 and I was 50, obviously, it's all relative, right? And when I was 60 and they were 80, I was still the same. Well, now I'm 73. And when I'm talking to somebody who's 90 or 95, to them, I'm still a kid. So it really is all relative because they still have 15 years on me.
Yeah.
And those experience, I don't have those. I don't have the experiences of living through my late 70s and 80s to 90. I may have a different point of view than I have now.
I mean, this is probably not something that you usually explore in your work, but I do think when you come to an issue, when you come to a stage where the trade-offs are, quote, not worth it. In other words, from your point of view, your trade-offs are not worth it. You decide that about life, because in the end, we all end up dying. So
you end up and dying, right? It's kind of, they go together, right?
Right. So
that's the end.
Yeah. So now we're coming to an issue. So now the society has tremendously changed in the last 50 years. People live longer.
Correct.
People have more health problems. They have to decide. So having just had my fourth cancer operation, the oncologist called me and said, gee, we're going to do one more test to see if you should have chemotherapy. And I laughed. I said, well, I'm not having chemotherapy. So that is a trade-off, obviously. And you can go through chemotherapy and maybe it would work and maybe I would be healthy for another 10 years or whatever, or maybe I won't, But my point is there's no end to trade-offs. And in the end, I think you have to look back on your life and say, I did what I thought was right at the time, even though I didn't see it as a trade-off. I thought I was doing what was right for whatever reason we have decided on this. And so in the end, I'm hoping that doing the right thing for me.
So let me ask you this question. So because, I had mentioned this to you, I think, when we had a conversation the other day, which is, are we living under an illusion of loss as opposed to the real gains as we age? And, you had brought up end of life, actually, because ultimately you're losing your life, right? But I wasn't getting to that point. I was just thinking, as people age, do you think that their point of view, more often than not, is that it's an illusion? Oh, I don't want to say it's an illusion. Their perception is that it's just loss, as opposed to thinking of this as a compounding effect. That it's wisdom, that's experience that has compounded with age. What do you think?
I remember when my mom was dying for 9 years of leukemia, lymphoma, shingles, terrible way to die. But what she offered was different than what you might be thinking about. What she offered was being present. What she offered, and all the people that came to see her every single night and brought her dinner, was there was no judgment on her part about their lives. It was an incredible session as I listened to all of them talk to her. And she was in bed, in tremendous pain. But they continued to talk every single night about their lives and who they were. And they knew that her caring and her love and understanding was bringing them such strength that was her gift. And so as we age, we have to think about, we're responsible for giving something back. We're not responsible for always playing pickleball, always playing golf, always, on our golf carts. No, we're responsible, to me, to give something back because of what we've gained in our life. And so I think everyone has to think about that in terms of what they can contribute. And perhaps that's different for everyone.
Correct. And I don't think it has to be something, and I think I've had this conversation the last few weeks, I told you about that video also, but it doesn't have to be something on a grand scale. It could be something small. Like you said, your mother was giving so much to all the people that visited her. Right. What can you contribute even in a small way? From your experiences, from your wisdom, from the length of time that you've lived, that you can share with somebody that might be, helpful or interesting or inspiring or something.
Or perhaps it's just listening.
And perhaps it's just listening, which is in and of itself a gift.
Yeah. So
because so many people, I would say, don't know how to listen or are not listened to, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a sense of loss when you're not heard.
Right.
So do you think that because we're communication people that we see that or understand that more, especially in an age where people are so connected to social media and their phones and texting and, the interpersonal communication is not there so much?
I guess it has something to do with character and how you perceive what your worth is and what you can do and how you can make a contribution if you think that's important. And that has something to do with character. I mean, there's always trade-offs. One of the things that I loved is that the phrase of doing well versus doing good.
Right.
That's a trade-off sometimes. And sometimes it's a moral trade-off. So I'm going to vote for someone who is going to do the right thing by my taxes, my whatever.
Right.
Even though I don't like that person for what they stand for in so many other ways. I'm just saying it's not so simple.
Right.
So when you think about yourself in doing well versus doing good, how is it that you end up on that scale? And it's not simple, and it never will be simple, because we have finite resources in this world, and we come into this world with finite resources, and we end with finite resources. And we've made decisions sometimes on the basis of doing well and sometimes on the basis of doing good. And that's the way it is. I can't describe it any other way.
No, I think that's, I think that's valuable. But I think I still would like to think that we can, I don't know if change is the right word, or inform or influence or inspire not only individuals, but as a society to think about longevity as like on a gain curve as opposed to on a downward spiral.
I guess that's how you feel about 80-20. If you think that's true, then you'll do it. But
that's my mission. That's my goal, right? To think about it, in it as a society. I mean, there are other societies that think about, the people that are older in their culture in a different way, I'll say. Whether, Asian cultures, many Asian cultures do, Native American cultures do, that's a global point of view, but because there are changes in there as well. But I think as a society in our country, we don't do that as well as they do in other cultures, possibly.
Well, I think rockfish live to be 100 or something. I think I just read that. I might be wrong about that. Might be not rockfish. My point is, our institutional mechanisms are not meant for us to live to 200. And we might, medically be able to increase lifespan to 200 or 100, 200, whatever. Obviously, we've increased it a lot already. So now what are we going to do? What is it that it's a fascinating notion that we wouldn't die. And so let's think about how, what are we really doing here? Because I don't know. We don't know. And I think we have a lot to understand and explore about ourselves, about our health, about longevity, about resources, about cultural norms, about the way in which we organize our society in terms of rules and regulations, because it doesn't enhance your ability to live to 200.
Well, interestingly enough, this is many years ago, when I started thinking about this. There's research to, I don't like the term reverse aging so much, but, increasing the lifespan, of course, without a health span, increasing the lifespan, like you said, people become more infirm or dependent or fragile. It doesn't really have to be that way. It depends on other choices, although it happens to people anyway, but the choices you make have a lot to do with it. What you eat, all of that, the pillars that we know are important for, contributing to a healthier lifestyle. But what I was thinking of, and this is at least 10 years ago, as I was maybe even 15 years ago, that if we are increasing the lifespan to, let's say, even 100, and there are many people that live into their 90s and 100 and above, but if we don't have a sense of purpose or contribution or value or respect or dignity, then what's the point?
Right.
So it's just what you said, really. What are we doing here?
Right. Well, how do we structure our work, our organizations, our belief systems, our humanitarian obligations? How do we think about each person? I don't see it right now in a lot of ways that are not only not helping our youth, because no one likes somebody who's not working, quote,
right,
and watching TV and staying on their phones and is rude, or whatever we think about the youth of today. And they don't like older people that are taking up resources, that we have to do all these things in the town so that we can make sure that those that are in wheelchairs can get around. Until we stop that, until we actually engage in thinking that we care, and we care because if we don't care about everybody else, they don't care about us. And when it comes to us, all of a sudden, what? How could you treat me like this? So I think we have a lot of work and a lot of work to do.
I was talking with somebody associated with a major university in this country, and they have an age-friendly initiative. That's okay. They have an age-friendly initiative, and I invited her onto the show to talk about their age-friendly initiative. And what she said to me was, well, it's kind of paused for the moment. And I thought that was interesting. I haven't asked her about that. I have to ask her more about that. Why have they paused that? See, everybody's on their phones. Everybody gets phone calls. Everybody gets everything all the time. There's no escaping it.
Sorry, I thought I had, sorry.
No, that's okay. But there's no escaping it. We're all, can we live without them? Probably not at this point.
Yeah.
Is there going back? Probably not. Although, I find myself, to be perfectly honest, there are times when I reach for my phone, I could feel that urge to do it. And I say, you know what? Why don't you just take a few, whatever few minutes you're going to do, is it that important that you were checking that thing? No. How about you just take some deep breaths and just relax, because I could feel that surge of energy inside me. And I think that's what the addictive part of it is, and that's what's keeping us, well, it depends. I mean, I talk on the phone. But you and I text with other people too, but maybe because I'm a communications person, phone calls to me are still much more meaningful, or Zooms, or, some kind of face-to-face communication is more meaningful to me. And I don't know, maybe it is because I'm a communication person, and maybe other people are perfectly fine just texting and that works for them. And younger people certainly are, I was at my daughter's house the last couple of days, and she was sitting at her kitchen table doing some work, and my granddaughter was in her room, and she's texting her. And my daughter finally said, "Stop texting me. You want to talk to me? Come out and talk to me. Stop with all the phones and the texting me." I think it's so much a part of them, that human connection. It's just what you're saying. We have to care about each other, talk to each other. I think that's important. I've brought this up before, and I'm sure you know of places too. There are college campuses now that are building. There's one in Rye, New York. It's SUNY Purchase. They've built independent living for older adults on the campus. So there's opportunities for, older people to interact with younger people, take classes. It's probably also a good use of their space. But I think that initiatives like that can be really terrific in bridging that divide.
I think you're right.
So maybe hopefully there'll be more of that.
Hopefully.
But listen, Suzanne, I can't thank you enough. This is really terrific. We don't get a chance to really talk like this that often. So I really appreciate that you
stay on topic. That's even. So it's nice to have an opportunity. And I think your whole show is about this, to bring people on to talk about specifically their lives and their experiences. And it may not be, the nice thing about it too is that I'm sure when this airs, you'll have people talking about their perspectives about this.
Right.
And that's even better, because it's, we can all learn how to do a better job.
Yeah, and I agree. Well, hopefully you and I will be able to talk again soon, but this was really great. And I know your perspectives and your insights they always mean a lot to me, and I'm sure they will for my viewers and listeners as well.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you so much, Phyllis, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Suzanne. So now for next week's guest. Well, I could go on and on about Mel Albans' accomplishments. Mel is the owner of MEA Holdings, LLC, a multimedia enterprise that currently features the Source TV radio network, Shop Black Prize.com and the Black Business Matter Live Aid Concert.com. Mel is CEO for the Source TV Radio Network, one of the biggest adult music and talk show nonprofit, non-commercial internet broadcast stations on the East Coast, reaching an average monthly global audience of nearly 3 million and over 38 million global viewers and listeners annually. He's produced award-winning streaming radio shows and was an artist manager for 2 decades. Mel has his own weekly live streaming show, the Jazz Confusion Power Hour, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And he is also a partner in a company called City Streets Music, providing world-class music festivals to small cities throughout the United States. And Dr. Ayman has spent a good portion of his career in academia as a full-time undergraduate, graduate faculty member and program administrator at Adelphi University, Excelsior College, UMUC, now University of Maryland Global Campus, and Strayer University. Mel served as executive director of the Executive MBA at UMUC and created and was executive director for the graduate program, Center for Global Enterprise at McDaniel College, founder of the Ayman Company's Diversified Investment Advisors, renamed Trans-American Retirement Services. And Mel also holds an BA in Political Science, an MA in U.S. Economic and Business History, an MBA in Econometrics, Investment Portfolio Analysis, and a dual PhD in U.S. Business and Economic History and Neuropsychology. Mel is also a frequent contributor to the New York Times. He wrote about the 4-generation family back in the 1990s, and has a keen interest in dynamics and challenges of intergenerational relationships. And Mel and I have had many conversations about how we care for and treat adults as they advance in age, which will be the focus of next week's show. So remember to tune in, comment, and ask questions on Wednesday, March 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Source TV Radio Network. And until then, take care, stay well, and stay tuned.
Go for it. I'm just saying I'm not finished yet. Search for it, swing for it. Discover the me that lives in yes. Stand for it, stretch for it. It's my time, imagine my best. Run for it, reach for it. Uncover the me that lives in yes. I know, yes I know